People generally think of Hitler at the Eagle's Nest, spent over 800 days at the Wolf's Lair. It was by far the most used of all his headquarters.
For 70 years, historians believe they knew every secret weapon Nazi Germany built during World War II. The V-2 rockets, the jet fighters, the wonder weapons that came too late to change anything. All of it seemed documented, studied, and understood. But when American soldiers broke into a hidden German hangar in April 1945, they found something that shouldn't have existed. It was an aircraft unlike anything they'd ever seen. Built with technologies ahead of its time, designed to do something no plane could do at the time. What they discovered today remained classified for decades. And the reason why will shock you. But before we get there, we need to go back to where this story really begins. The flying wing design. The history of this strange aircraft starts with two German brothers who had an idea that everyone thought was crazy. Walter and Ryer Horton grew up in the 1920 S-EN. Germany wasn't allowed to have a military aircraft. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles made it illegal. But the treaty didn't say anything about gliders, which are planes without engines. So flying gliders became hugely popular across Germany. The Horton brothers spent their weekends in hills building and launching these simple wooden aircraft. While most people just enjoyed the hobby, their brothers kept noticing something strange. Every airplane in the world had basically the same design. A long body in the middle, wings attached to three sides, a tail in the back, and fins sticking up. But all those extra parts slowed the plane down because they created resistance against the air. More resistance meant you needed bigger engines and more fuel just to keep flying. The Hortons had a different idea. What if you got rid of everything except the wing itself? No separate body, no tail, no fins, just one big curved wing that could lift the plane. Steer it and carry everything inside. It sounds simple. But no one had ever made it work on a real airplane before. They started small, building models in their parents' garage using cheaply wood and glue. When they tested them, these odd-looking designs actually flew smoother and stayed in the air longer than traditional planes. The problem was turning a backyard experiment into an actual war machine. And that would need something the brothers didn't have yet, the impossible demand to build. Something that ambitious required a huge amount of money, manpower, and time. Things they simply did not have. Many engineers proposed bold ideas, but resources were scarce and other priorities came first. Eventually, in 1943, the two brothers did receive money and resources. By then, however, the situation was far from good. Germany was losing the war badly. British and American bombers were wiping out German cities night after night. Factories were burning, and Die Luftwaffe was running out of planes and pilots. Hermann Göring, who ran Germany's Air Force, needed a miracle weapon fast. So Göring announced a crazy challenge to every aircraft company in Germany. Heckled it Project 3-1000. Their requirements were simple. Design a planet that carries 1,000 kilograms of bombs, flies 1,000 kilometers, and reaches 1,000 kilometers per hour. To understand how insane this was. Deficit fighter planes back then barely reached 700 kilometers per hour when diving straight down. Heavy bombers moved at about 400. Engineers at companies like Messerschmitt and Junkers thought Göring had completely lost touch with reality. Regular piston engines couldn't go fast, no matter how much you push at them. The new jet engines were faster, but they gulped fuel so quickly that planes would run out of gas long before hitting the distance target. The math just didn't work. Except the Horton brothers saw an answer nobody else could see. Their flying wing had way less air resistance than normal planes. Less resistance meant less fuel burned at high speeds. It was the only design that might actually hit all three numbers Göring wanted. They drew up plans for the H-229 and sent them in. When Göring saw the designs, he didn't law or throw them away. What happened next would push German engineering into territory that wouldn't exist again for another 40 years. The ghost plane. Göring didn't just approve the design. He gave the Horton brothers unlimited money and top priority on everything they needed. They could take materials from other projects, hire the best engineers, and build without anyone questioning their decisions. But that plane they created did something neither aircraft could do at the time. It could hide from radar. When American soldiers captured the HO-229 and their engineers looked at it closely, they got confused immediately. They expected to see aluminum and steel like every other warplane, but instead they found plywood. The whole wing structure was just layers of thin wood glued together, and even the frame was steel tubes wrapped in wood. At first, they assumed Germany had run out of metal because of the war, and that was partly true, but the real reason was much smarter. Ramar Horton knew how British radar worked. Radar stations sent out radio waves that bounced off metal planes and came back as dots on a screen, which is how England spotted German bombers before they arrived. But wood doesn't bounce radio waves back the same way metal does. The waves pass through the wood instead of reflecting. The brothers went even further by mixing coal, dust, and sawdust into the glue between the wood layers. Scientists who did samples decades later discovered that carbon soaks up radio waves and turns them into tiny amounts of heat instead of sending signals back. THEHO-229 became the first real stealth aircraft ever built, designed to slip past radar completely. But being invisible was only half the plan, and what they intended to do with it was far darker. The hidden factories. The darker purpose became clear when American intelligence officers found secret documents locked in safes at the facility. These papers show that the HO-29 wasn't meant to be just a fighter or a bomber. It was designed to carry exactly 1,000 kilograms of payload, and that number wasn't random. It matched the weight of a specific weapon Germany was quietly working on called a dirty bomb. Germany never managed to build a full atomicum like the ones America later dropped on Japan. But they were developing something else. A dirty bomb mix is regular, explosive with radioactive powder left over from nuclear reactor tests. When it goes off, the explosion itself isn't huge, but it scatters radiation everywhere and makes the area unlivable for years. The goal isn't to destroy buildings with blast power. It's to poison the ground and force everyone to leave. The HO-229 was perfect for delivering this kind of weapon. It could fly fast enough that radar stations would only see it a few minutes before it arrived, which gave defenders almost no time to react. Documents found at the site listed targets, like London and Allied armed positions moving through Belgium. Even more shocking were the blueprints for an Asian version called the HO-18th. This design was 3 times bigger with 6 jet engines and enough fuel to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and reach New York or Washington. But building hundreds of these planes seemed impossible when Allied bombers were flattening every German factory they could find. Unless the Nazis had figured out how to hide their production somewhere unreachable, the stolen Führer. Nazis began building everything underground where bombs couldn't reach Dot and the Owl Mountains. Located in what is now Poland, they dug a huge network of tunnels deep into solid rock. They called it Rezi, which means giant, and it was built by prisoners from concentration camps. Tens of thousands of people died making it. These weren't small caves either. The tunnels went on for kilometers with train tracks incident rooms tall enough to fit entire locomotives. They found bases for heavy factory equipment, huge ventilation fans, and power stations strong enough to run assembly lines. The plan was Tomo of aircraft production Kompletellenden where no bomber could touch it. But time ran out. On February 18th, 1945, test pilot Erwin Ziller took the second prototype up for a flight at 800 meters high. The right engine caught fire. Ziller tried everything to bring it down safely. But the plane had no tail to help balance it. And with only one engine working, it went into a spin and crashed. Ziller died and the prototype burned. 3 weeks later, American troops stormed into Friedrich Roa and found a third HO-229 sitting in the hangar. Almost finished, but never flown. They took the HO-229 apart piece by piece, packed everything into crates, and shipped it to America. The plane ended up hidden in a Smithsonian storage facility for decades. Meanwhile, American companies like Northrop studied German blueprints and used Deflin wing concepts to design the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. In 2009, engineers finally tested a replica off HO-229 against 1940s radar systems. The result showed it would have been nearly invisible, appearing on screens as just a small bird instead of a massive aircraft. The Nazis lost the war, but their technology lived on and shaped everything that came after. So, in themed, the weapon that might have changed the course of World War II never got the chance to fly in combat. The HO-229 remained hidden, unfinished, and forgotten as the Third Reich collapse adorned it. So, what do you think? Could this plane have actually turned the war around if it had flown sooner?